Hey, thanks everybody for watching this program, Fatherhood Secrets. I'm seeking experts in fields to, share their knowledge and what it means as an athlete. You're raising a kid, trying to couple sports with parenting. And today I have a really awesome guest, Coach Braden, who is an awesome wrestling coach, crazy program. And we're excited to get to share a little bit of time with Braden, who is a wrestler himself. Um, awesome coach, great with kids. But let's just start off, Braden. How did you get into wrestling? How did you fall in love with wrestling? Has it always been a part of your life? How'd you get going?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. For me, my story is kind of interesting with wrestling. So my dad coached it I started when I was 4, but I was a pretty soft kid, and I truthfully was not a huge fan of wrestling. I did it, but I didn't compete super hard. I did it for like a month out of the year. I played a lot of other sports. And then around like 8th grade, I had like a really tough match that I lost, and for some reason it really bothered me and stuck with me. And so I told my parents, hey, I want to start wrestling more. I'm not going to play basketball anymore. Probably a great call. I'm still only about 5'4", so basketball is probably out of the question. But so I started wrestling a little bit more, and I started to have more success. Found some really good coaches out in Wendell at the Delchev Training Academy. I'm from Twin Falls. So I started wrestling with Delchev and Coach Staker, and they just started elevating my ability, and I really kind of just fell in love with it and became obsessed with the process of getting to be the best that I could be. And the rest was kind of history. I never looked back. Eventually this is what I want to do in college. This is, I felt really called to do it. I knew I always wanted to coach, so I knew that one day I'd end up in a coaching role with whatever sport it became. But it's just kind of weird. Like something happened and I switched the flip to I want to be a full-time wrestler. And then after that, it became the only sport I did. And now it's my passion.
Yeah. So wrestling is one of those sports, and but I'm sure the audience knows by now. I got 4 kids, and primarily they're not wrestlers. Primarily, they're baseball, football kids. And before we moved to Idaho from Texas, we loved jujitsu, and we were going to a jujitsu program. But when your kids get older, things become more and more expensive, and so we kind of just fell into the wrestling world. And I will tell you, it is the most exciting time for me because seeing my kids overcome adversity, and I feel like they're decent at wrestling. I think they're okay when we keep the competitions close, but as soon as those real wrestlers start coming in, it's really tough.
Yeah.
But from your experience, how does wrestling teach kids how to come over how to overcome adversity in different areas of life?
Yeah.
How does wrestling connect to life in general? What does it teach them about adversity? And how do we teach kids to move and grow from your perspective?
So I love that question, and I've been thinking about it since you had sent it to me. One of the things I love about wrestling is I think it teaches you to almost chase adversity and not be afraid of it. And I really started reflecting on it last year, and I started really saying it to our athletes, because wrestling is really hard, and especially at a young age, the fact that I'm going to lose is really hard, and you see that fear of failure. And so I've really, upon reflecting, started preaching it to people that, with wrestling, the reward for working hard and getting to a high level isn't so much that it gets easier. It does get easier, but it also gets harder because you start to get rewarded with tougher opponents. And I think that's a great thing for life. Like the harder you work, the more opportunities you're going to have to, put yourself out there and to test yourself. And you learn to not be afraid of that adversity. You learn rather to attack adversity. And I think that that's such a valuable skill in life, because I think there's a lot of people in the world that, you see adversity coming, you see a storm coming, and you run from that. Whereas, and I'm a firm believer that the world needs more wrestlers, because I think that wrestling is so crucial for teaching those trials in my life, they're not final. I might get knocked down, but hey, I'm going to get another opportunity. I learned that, hey, I actually want to be tested because I want to have to prove what I'm capable of, or just, and for me, I'm a person of faith. So it's like, this is an opportunity that God has put in front of me to test myself and to test my relationship. And so I think you just learn not to be afraid of adversity. Like it's a tool, you come with the process.
And for people listening, I don't know if you caught it, but you get rewarded with tougher opponents. And I don't think I've ever looked at it like that on a development side. But tell me more about the reward with tougher opponents.
Yeah.
How can we get a wrestler or somebody to flip their mindset to go, hey, this is reward. Yeah. I'm cooking, I'm doing well, and I'm going to get rewarded by getting faced up with this guy who is the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I don't have the full answer. It was just something, I sat down, I went and coached at I went and helped with Team Idaho at Turf War Duels in the summer. It's like a regional duel tournament. And that was kind of the time where I started really thinking about it. Cause there you get a lot of really tough kids that do really well in Idaho. And then they went and we wrestled Oregon, and I don't think we won a match. And I think the duel went like 20 minutes. We just got worked. And there was a bunch of kids that aren't even in my room. We had a good amount that were in the fighting squirrel room on the team, but it was like, what can I tell these really tough wrestlers who already understand that, hey, I do have to get knocked down from time to time. And then I started thinking more about what can I say to younger kids that don't know that already. And so that was the whole, we work hard because we want those tough moments, right? When we're little kids and hopefully even older athletes, like you're still dreaming. And when you dream about winning big moments, whether it's football, baseball, I played baseball and football and all those things in wrestling, competing against the highest names, right? You're picturing striking out the best batter in the bottom of the ninth inning in the World Series. You're picturing beating a state champion and All-American. You don't picture yourself beating or dream of yourself beating those people that you already beat in 30 seconds. And so that's kind of where I've been like, well, hey, your reward is you're getting that thing that you're dreaming of. Like you're getting that opportunity. Does that mean you're going to win? No. But like you're working hard. So your reward is you're getting that opportunity because you've earned that opportunity. And so it does get easier where you leave the people that aren't working hard behind. But that reward is ultimately I'm going to be tested.
Yeah.
And there's I don't remember what Bible verse it is, but there's a scripture that talks about like when you ask for something, don't grow weary, because if you do, you're like a ship tossed in the waves. And that's kind of something that I started to kind of live by, that where, hey, I'm asking for these tough moments because I'm training hard and I'm working hard and I'm, sacrificing a lot for it. Like you're asking for it. So when you get it, don't be upset when you get what you worked for and you get the opportunity.
Don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
And so wrestling is one of those sports, and I didn't grow up a wrestler. And so it's a really great opportunity for me just to take my kids to you and your program and to say, okay, they're yours. But wrestling is one of those sports, like many others, like what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And you're going to see massive growth, both physically and mentally. And for my kids specifically, since they started wrestling, their mental toughness in other sports has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to go to is mental toughness. How do you coach a kid that is speaking negatively to themselves or has a negative aura? I can't, do this, or I'm incapable of doing something else. How do you get them to flip that switch and really create the mental side of it? Because you've done it to my kids.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Your kids rock, man. The growth that they've made, and this is only I'm going into my third year here in this community. But like the mental toughness, man, I think it's all about teaching athletes to love the process. I'm really close with Brad Murray and John Murray, and I mean they're the reasons that I came over to the Meridian Wrestling community and got the Fighting Squirrels job. And if you spend like even 5 minutes with those guys, they'll they're so process focused. And so for mental toughness, we work really hard just to be, hey, it's not about the wins and the losses, right? Those will happen. Those are a part of the sport. It's more about, how do I learn to be the best competitor that I can be? Because at the end of the day, when you're done competing, that's just a great model for life. And so when kids start to get really negative with themselves, I make sure to really, make them take a deep breath. If you watch me after matches, and really with most age group, when the athlete comes off the mat and they're emotional and, maybe they just had a really tough match, it's all, the first step I always do is like, hey, take a deep breath. And you put your arm on them and you just say, hey, like, it happens. Okay. Here's some things you can work on, but just know it's not final, and I think that really helps. And I tend to just ooze positivity. I think that's really important. Looking at things as the glass half full is really important. Like, hey, you lost, but that's okay. It's going to make you better in the long run, but let's learn from it correctly. Don't stew on it. And my dad gave me really good advice, and it shaped my mental toughness. And so I try to pass it on. We called it the 5-minute rule. Because when I first started, like I hate losing. And I still don't. I don't like losing. But I would be super emotional and couldn't really talk to me. And it would mess up my next match. And so my dad came up with the 5-minute rule, and it was, hey, you get 5 minutes to be upset. And then you have to understand that you can't change what happened, and all you can do is go forward. And that shaped my mental toughness. And, from that point on, I think I was a sophomore in high school when he said that to me. It's kind of molded my coaching approach, where the kid comes off and it's like, hey, like, you competed so hard. I can't coach grit and competing hard. I can coach wrestling. And so you at least did step one. Yeah. So understand that we're gonna keep being a part of the process. Like, losses don't define you. How you're gonna respond from it defines you. And I think kids really gravitate towards that because it's a simple mindset approach. It's not overly complicated for them. It's still hard in application, but just giving them that whole, hey, you can't change what happened. Life's gonna move on whether you want it to or not. So let's just move on in a positive way so that the next time it's better.
Yeah. And wrestling is one of those sports where when you win, it's tough. And when you lose, it's tough.
Yeah.
Other sports don't have that, where, in football, you can go out and dominate a team and it's easy. The winning was easy. You run the football, you run it down their throat, and it's just easy. We can overpower them and it's easy. But wrestling is not like that. Standing in front of another human, even if they dominate them on the mat, when you stand in front of another human and you're almost in, a fight, their feeling has got that adrenaline, and it's really tough. And I remember the first year that we wrestled, or maybe it was the second year, and maybe it was the first year, where my oldest, Landon, he would win the easy matches and then lose anything that was tough, anything remotely tough. And there was one match he was wrestling. He started getting a nosebleed. My kids, they like to bleed. Getting a nosebleed, and blood is in his hair. He's blonde, so his hair's turning red. Yeah. And we're sitting there trying to plug him up, and it's a very close match. And then all of a sudden, he flips it and gets a pin. And it was like the first match that he actually came out on top. Yeah. But in that moment, I'm thinking, no matter what scenario you're in as a wrestler, it's tough either way. Yeah. It's tough to win and it's tough to lose. Yeah. Because you're like in this grinder for the periods, and it's really difficult. Yeah. But to get to that point where you win those matches and come through that on the other side of toughness, it takes discipline, and it takes at least, like my kids are not primary wrestlers, but they have to pour into the process. They have to be disciplined. They have to focus in practice. They have to learn what you're teaching them. Yeah. And so from your perspective, how are you teaching the kids that discipline? How are you getting them to pour into the process?
Yeah. Oh man. I don't think you can be a successful wrestler and really human. And that's probably just because of my background in wrestling, but I don't think you can be successful without discipline and consistency. And it's like being consistently disciplined. Like those two things go together so well, and they're kind of building blocks for a successful life. So for me, it's really getting athletes to buy into, what do I want? Like, do I want to be successful in this? And if it's an easy yes, and for the most part with athletes, whatever sport it is, it's almost always yes. Like, yeah, I want to be successful. That's why I'm here. And it's, well, if you want to be successful, then you've got to understand that you have to be willing to do this, and you have to be willing to live a disciplined life. With wrestling, like, there's so much that goes into that. The 6 minutes that we're on the mat, like you said, like, there's such a storm that brews within the person. Wrestling, to me, is one of the most vulnerable things you can do, because you step foot in front of someone else. There's no team, there's no backup. You just step on the mat. And so, oh man, lost my train of thought. There's so much that goes into it that, like, you have to be disciplined with what you eat. You've got to be disciplined with what time you go to bed. You have to be consistent with what you eat, consistent with what time you go to bed. You've got to be disciplined with who you keep around you, and the people that are pouring into you. Negative people are going to create negative thoughts. People that want me at practice are going to support me. Even if they don't wrestle, they're going to understand that's important to me. So you got to be disciplined with the people you let into your circle. And then you got to be consistent in your actions. I think consistency is huge. For me, I wasn't a great wrestler. Like, I started wrestling year round in 8th grade, and even my parents will tell you, like, I really wasn't anything special. But I started wrestling with coaches that forced me to be consistent and be at practice every day and be disciplined with the food I intake, the amount of water I drank, the amount of sleep I was getting, and the growth that I made in 1 year was crazy. I mean, I ended up being a state placer as a freshman, and I was definitely not going to be a state placer as an 8th grader going into it. And then eventually I was competing and in the mix for multiple state titles. I was placing at national tournaments, and it was because of, like, forcing myself to be disciplined with what I did. And so, going back to kind of long story short, like, getting kids to buy into the process is making them see the importance of it. And they see it, I think, through my actions. They see it through your kids see it through your actions. Kids are observant. I teach also. They're so observant. And if they see the people that they look up to, or the people that they listen to, living what they preach, and then seeing the success that they have, it's pretty easy to get them to buy into that process, because they're like, oh, it's the proof's right there. They're doing it. I need to find what it looks like for me.
Yeah, that's a success formula. And you talked about success, like, are you measuring success by wins and losses, or how are you measuring success for your athletes?
Yeah, definitely not wins and losses. Like, obviously wins and losses are a part of it. And we want to be in big matches. I say it all the time. Like, we love big matches. We want to be in big matches. We want to be in state finals. We want to be in national finals. We had an athlete make the Fargo finals. 2 athletes make the Fargo finals this year. Like, we want to be in those pressure moments. But we don't determine success on winning or losing those moments, right? We determine success on what kind of a life are you living? Are you living a life of purpose, a life where we can see the growth you're making, and let alone the success you're having in wrestling? What kind of a life do you live outside of our room? To me, that's how I feel like we determine success is what kind of a human are you? Do you love the process of being a human? Do you love the process of, trying to live a life of purpose and living a life that's not content? Are you hungry to be the best version of yourself? And I feel like more wins happen than losses when you live that life. And so I definitely don't determine our success on the wins and losses. I determine how do we respond to those? What kind of humans are we? How do we compete? Are we just competitors, and do we love what we do? And that to me is successful. If I get, we have so many kids at Squirrels. If I have 120 kids that come in each night that just love and are passionate about getting to be the best that they can be, then I feel like we're very successful.
Yeah. And so for people that don't know, Squirrels is a youth program, and there's people in there from, I would say 4 years old to 14, or even further. You get some of the big kids that come back and they work on their craft and they help the little kids grow. And that leads them to Meridian High School. So in Idaho, Meridian High School is the place to wrestle. It is dominant, and it is the best place. Coaches, kids, everybody pours into the wrestling. at Meridian High School, which is crazy because Meridian High School in our valley is not held in a high regard. I coach football at Meridian High School, and I see it firsthand. But at the end of the day, you have so many successful wrestlers. Do you guys do anything different or teach them anything different when they go in and they were supposed to win a match and then they lose one?
Oh man. I feel like each of us are different. We have so many coaches just within our community. Like Brad Murray and I are very similar. He's like coach at Meridian High. Like we're very similar, but we're also different. And we've got guys like Rich Bailey, who Hall of Fame wrestling coach, Brian Shackelford, Brian Twait, John Murray, Dalton Young. Like we have so many really quality coaches that approach it differently. But I think, when you have an athlete that goes in and they should win and they lose, I think we're very, very good at identifying what does this athlete need? And I think we communicate and we do a really good job of we do life with these athletes, and that's our goal. It's really special when you can do life. And for me, I get to see them starting at age 4, but when you get to do life and you really get to know the athlete and you know what they need to hear when they need to hear it. And I think that's kind of a superpower of ours. Like, hey, he didn't wrestle well. He just lost a match he should. And maybe he doesn't seem to care. Like, I'm gonna get after this kid a little bit because it seems like they need a little bit of a fire. So understanding when to call athletes out, or hey man, they're going through something. They know what they did. They're being harder on themselves than I need to be. I'm going to show this. I'm going to show more love and compassion because I think they need to hear it. And so I think that's a testament to our coaching staff, because I think every loss is different. And I've learned so much. Like it's crazy. Coming into this, I was reflecting about like just my journey in wrestling and the levels that I've jumped as a coach in the past couple of years. And really, it's because, like you said, that Meridian wrestling community, they're incredible. There's such a wealth of knowledge and just genuine human beings that want to give back to everybody. And so like, because of them, I've really come to understand, how do I get to know my athletes that much better? And how do I recognize what they need in that moment?
Yeah, it's so good, man. The Fighting Squirrels program in Meridian Wrestling is so good. It's, as a coach myself, it's almost like you want to get to that level where, you have dedicated athletes and there's a dedicated community to wrestling, to Meridian, and the people in the town feel it. And it's just awesome. And so, I want to jump into like a father's perspective. And as a dad in wrestling, I don't have high expectations. So my emotion meter doesn't get really high. In other sports it has, but when I've gone to, the meets, you get matches, I've seen dads, put their kid on the wall and say, you should have pinned him in the first round, or just people just going over the top. What would your advice be to a dad watching this? And maybe they're an experienced wrestling dad, or maybe they're a new wrestling dad. But what would your advice be for them to kind of relieve the pressure? Don't put pressure on the kid, because it's tough. Wrestling is tough, and they don't need added pressure from a parent.
Yeah. Dude, love that question. Being a parent in wrestling is so hard. And I'm not a parent myself, so I don't know yet, but like wrestling is such an emotionally charged sport that I can only imagine being a parent is super difficult. And I have a lot of respect for the way that my dad parented me with the sport. I think it helped that I kind of came to it late. And there were still moments where like, he would get emotional or I would get emotional and you would say things, but ultimately my advice to parents is, I think, one, know what your athlete wants out of it. Like, if your athlete wants to be at the highest level, they want to be a state champ, a national champ, they want to wrestle at a really solid college, or, maybe it's an Olympic aspiration, right? If that's their goal, then understand that they know that there's pressure on certain matches, right? They know that they need to be ready and they need to get up for certain moments. They don't necessarily need you being like, oh, are you ready? Or like questioning them. They need that reassurance. And so I think, one, have that conversation with your athlete. Like, what is your goal here? Because I'm going to know how much I should, push into you. Right. And then I also think, like, kind of funny enough, I don't really want to coach my kids in the future. And it's not because I don't think I can't handle, like not chewing them out, or I don't think I'd ever push my own kid up against the wall after a loss, but it's more, I just want to support. Like wrestling is so hard, and I want to be that role where I get to just be a fan and cheer them on for the hard work that they're doing and the hard sport that they're doing and the mental skills and the life skills that I know that they're learning through the sport. I just want to support them in that. And so for me, it's have that conversation with those kids. If your kid wants it, then surround them with people that are going to help them chase that. Like the coaches at Meridian, like hopefully my kids get to wrestle for those guys, because I know that they're going to take care of them. I know that they're going to get to know and give my athlete the best experience. So surround those people, and then learn to know what they need to hear. I remember I was wrestling at Reno Worlds, and I wasn't wrestling very well. I won my first couple matches, and I wasn't competing well, not to the level that I knew I could, and I lost a match and just got worked and didn't have much of a fire. And my dad hadn't chewed me out in a while. And I remember walking up to him, and he was like, dude, what's your problem? Like, where are you? And it hit me hard. Cause he wasn't really like that a whole lot. And then I sat there and went, oh my gosh, he's right. Like I need to figure out, I got no fire. And we came all the way to, Las Vegas or Reno to compete hard. And I ended up, wrestling, I think my bracket had 130 kids in it, 140, ended up wrestling back to the blood round. And funny enough, I lost to the same kid twice, bracket of 130, 40 kids. And the only kid that beat me was the same kid, but he pinned me the first time in the first period. And we ended up going to overtime the second time. And I competed much harder and had an opportunity to win. And so for me, it was my dad knew that I needed to hear that. And so
just matching intensity, man, is from a coaching perspective, it is wild, because you can come up with all the strategy that you want. And if you don't match the intensity, I would say most of the time you lose.
Yeah.
And Colton had a football game yesterday, and I thought we were well prepared. They didn't do anything special, but they were so much more on fire.
Yeah.
And we ended up losing that game 44-0. We just couldn't match it. It doesn't mean that they're not great football players. It just means that as a coach, I got to figure out a different way to motivate them to meet that standard, because you will lose.
Yeah.
But shifting gears, I want to talk a little bit about faith. You mentioned that you're a man of faith, and my family is too. We are too, and I think faith and sports go hand in hand. I think not just having the faith to win, but having like a solid background in faith, because it allows you to walk out on those waters that are storming.
Yeah.
How do you match your faith and wrestling, and how do you let that live through your coaching?
Yeah. So for me, it's, I truly do feel called, by faith, by God to do what I'm doing, to be given back. I've always wanted to coach. It was weird. From when I was 8, I was buying John Wooden books at Barnes & Noble. I was obsessed with learning how to coach with faith and how to live a life that I feel God has called me. And so for me, the managing of faith is, there have been so many instances in my life where I know that they're not of my hand or really any other hand other than God. I wouldn't have met my wife through wrestling, and she's a stud, and she's helped me grow as a human. The coaches at Meridian, if I'd have never had that moment where all of a sudden my heart shifted to wrestling, my relationship with my family, we're all incredibly close. So I feel very grateful, and I know that there's a much stronger hand at work. And so for me, incorporating faith into my coaching, I know that I'm going to get athletes that come from different religions that come into my room. And so for me, it's more living the life that I feel called to live, which is a life of supporting young athletes to be the best versions of themselves, so that eventually they go out into the world and they impact people in a positive way. And then we leave this world a much, much better place. And then, and from time to time, you do bring people closer to your faith. And so for me, it's just living that life that I'm called to live, and supporting and making those connections on a deeper level. Because I truly do feel called for that.
Oh, dude, most of most coaches, most coaches truly love coaching. I mean, I truly love
Yeah.
coaching football.
Yeah.
But last year, coaches at Meridian and I went to a middle school game, and we got a kid there that we seen that was, in between district kind of kid. And we watched him perform, and he performed so great. And he came to Meridian eventually. And 2 weeks ago or so, he left Meridian practice. I'm coaching the littles. It's right after. And he scootered back to the practice, and he grabbed me afterwards, and he said, "Coach, I don't know how to feel happy."
Oh man.
And it was a moment where I got to share faith with him.
Yeah.
I got to share my story with him. He ended
Yeah.
up with me in church on Sunday.
Oh man.
And coaches that don't feel like they're called to coach may not see these opportunities,
Yeah.
but I feel like I'm called to coach. And
Yeah. That's incredible.
if you open your ears a little bit,
Yeah.
that one circumstance that I thought was recruiting a player or kind of encouraging a player,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was
Yeah.
to share my story with him,
Yeah.
to save him eternally rather
Yeah.
than just make him a good football player.
So powerful. And that's what we're here for, right? Like at some point we do finish competing. And it's what are you left with? Like that's a great story of like, just be, the divine intervention, if you want to call it, but like that moment of, hey, I get to not only, you get to see it and you get to see it in action like that.
It's like
That's
you pour in, it's like filling their bucket, man. And it's so much more than just X's and O's.
yeah.
So much more. And so for people, for dads or moms that are like all on the fence about wrestling, because I was too. And like my kids are mostly sensitive kids, except for Knox is super temperamental. But for parents that are on the fence, my kid's shy, my kid's not aggressive, how would you encourage them to pour into wrestling? Or if they're unsure, what is your advice for that parent?
My advice is just, you never know when it's going to click. For me, it was 8th grade. Like I wrestled, I was pretty soft. I cried a lot. I'd go to practice with my dad as a little kid and would want to just be there just to hang out with the older kids. Like I didn't really care for wrestling. And then, something happens. And so you never know when it's going to click for that athlete. And so my advice is don't write it off too soon. Put them in those opportunities, listen to them. Like if they're really struggling and they're like, I just want to go once a week, like let them go once a week. Because you never know when it's going to click for them. I try to live my life never closing a door, right? There's always an opportunity to do something. And so, kids know kind of what they want, but also it's very easy for them to want to take the path of least resistance. And wrestling very much is the opposite of that. But, kind of circling back to where we even started with this, like wrestling to me more than any other sport, and I love sports. I mean, I love football. I played baseball a lot. I played football a lot. To me, there's no sport that prepares you for life more, even if you are not chasing it at the highest level. Even if you're just a casual wrestler, like there's no sport that prepares you for that. So, keep your kids in it. You never know when it's going to click. Don't push them so hard that they want to quit. Listen to them in that respect, but keep them in it, keep them invested, because eventually it will click. It's going to happen, and the skills they're going to take away from it, even if they never reach the highest level, and it's just kind of their secondary, third sport. Like they're going to be in great shape. They're gonna mentally be pretty strong, so that when they leave your household, they can adapt to the world around them. And so, I think my advice would just be to keep them in it. Understand that they're going to click at some point, and they're going to learn how to do it for themselves. And that's a very powerful weapon in life.
Yeah, and I think I like, now that I've seen wrestling, dude, I'm 100% in.
Love it.
Like for people that haven't done it, and when I talk to people about squirrels more than any other sport, I'm like, football, you can wait. Football, you can wait. We can. I believe you start them early in tackle football. I love football, but you can wait. But I'm like, you have to wrestle.
Yeah.
And when I have my football players, even the littles, even the ones that go to Meridian High School that don't wrestle, I'm like, you guys, what you don't understand are the life lessons that you're going to learn from wrestling, because there's going to be something that you face head on that you cannot run from. When you're in that circle and that ref puts those darn leg bands on you, you can't run from it.
Yep.
You are battling in that moment. And as a dad, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your kids are having difficult problems at school, or maybe it's you're in between jobs, you're gonna have to face it head on.
Absolutely.
And so, dude, thanks for having this conversation with me. I want to be super respectful of your time. We're like at 35 minutes, and dude, a lot of really great things. And so, listen, if you are in the Meridian community, the Idaho community, the boys at Treasure Valley, all together, please check out the Fighting Squirrels. You can find them on Facebook.
Thanks for having me, man. This was a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to it.